would like to call to order the December 7, 2021 Little Rock City Board of Directors meeting. We would like to welcome those that are in attendance as well as those watching at home or streaming online. I believe City Director Kathy Peck is online as well. Madam Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Director Miller.
Here.
Director Richardson.
Here.
Director Webb. Here. Director Peck. Director Wright. Here. Director Wyrick. Present. Director Campiris.
Present.
Director Phillips.
Here.
Director Adcock. Present. Vice Mayor Hines.
Present.
Mayor Scott.
Present. I now take this time to recognize Director Adcock with invocation.
Please bow. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight, Lord, to ask you to bless our meeting and be with us as we do the business for the city of Little Rock. We thank you for all the gifts that you have given us, those that we've recognized and those that we have been slow to recognize. We ask you, O Lord, to be with our first responders and for each of our citizens and residents as we go about this evening. Guide and direct those that are here with us safely home and be with each of us, Lord, again, as we do your business. We ask in your holy name, amen.
Amen. May y'all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we can start with today's business, we do have a presentation regarding Rock Academy. In October of 2020, we launched a civic engagement course for Little Rock residents called Rock Academy. The letters stand for Residents Obtaining Community Knowledge. The 6 sessions were Government 101, Dollars and Cents, Safety in the City, Little Rock Building Blocks, Living in Little Rock, and Community Care. Each week, the residents hear from Little Rock Department directors and other city officials and engage with each other. They ask questions and offer insight. They also have weekly homework. Examples include ride the Rock Region Metro, download the 311 app, and find a park nearest their home. Tonight, the 3rd cohort of graduates, many from the class, are here in person. Before all the class members present, they're given, we want to take time to give them some certificates. Mr. Carter, is he? Or Ashley, could you get Mr. Carter, Scott Carter, bring them in? You can bring them in. Before we present certificates to all the class members, we want to take time to hear from 3 of the class members with brief remarks. We'll start. Let's give them a round of applause as they come in. We'll start now with some comments from Beth Quarles to Vanya Strickland and Stephen Robinson.
Good evening. About 5 years ago,
Miss Beth, you'll speak directly into the mic.
Can you hear? Okay. Good evening. About 5 years ago, I moved to Little Rock to come to graduate school, and I really had no intention of staying. But the city and the people won me over. Since living here, I finished graduate school. I worked in the education and nonprofit sectors. I sit on the Commission for Children, Youth, and Families, and this year I started a small business. So I'm always looking to find ways to get involved in my community and be sure that I am using the taxpayers' money well on the commission. I heard about the Rock Academy and it blew me away. I learned so much about other things going on in the city that I had no clue about, and I feel like I'm pretty involved. I learned about the transit system. I learned about the zoo. I learned about the parks and recreation. I even have a volunteer opportunity coming up thanks to the academy. I not only learned from city officials, but I learned a lot from my classmates. There's a lot of expertise in this room. We use the tagline, Unite Little Rock, often, But I think this is one of the best programs that happens, because now I feel like I understand my community more, but also I have another community behind me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Vanya Strickland.
Good evening. As a citizen, as a wife, as a mother, as just someone who moved to Little Rock a few years ago, and Beth was just talking about that. We did a family move to Little Rock because this is where my husband was from. And as all of those things, I have to tell you that Rock Academy has been very, very, very informative, beneficial, and encouraging and necessary. Week after week, it was wonderful to not only get information about what's going on in the city of Little Rock, but also each and every facilitator and guest presenter also gave us ways to get involved, which is what we all, I think, we all were looking for. And it also gave us an avenue to have open, honest discussion about things that are going well, things that are happening, businesses that are coming here that we didn't know about, but also it gave us ways to discuss things that need to improve. And we were able to do that in a community that was very open and welcoming. And I would say, like I just said, that Rock Academy is very necessary because it did not matter our ward that we were from. It didn't matter our political stance, but we all were able to come together and really discuss ways that we want to be involved. And we all were citizens that actually want to unite Little Rock. And that was just wonderful to see as someone who's moved here just a few years ago. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will now begin with Stephen Robertson.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully I'll remember some public speaking experience from school, but I want to start off my comments first by just expressing my thanks for whoever was the brain trust of Rock Academy, because it was a very pleasant experience, a very easy and engaging way to try and initiate citizen involvement in the city. Everyone who was involved in the organization and all the presenters from all the different departments were extremely positive, extremely courteous and professional, and they would take all comments in stride, whether they were positive or maybe less than positive. They seemed like they really had their heart in their work, and they were very proud of it, and they wanted to accept the positive feedback where it existed, and maybe attempt to address or rectify things where they could. So I wanted to say thank you, and I hope that the Rock Academy program is here for a very long time. I've been a citizen of Little Rock since I was basically 3. So I've been here and called it my home for 28 years, especially the Pembroke Clover Hill neighborhood. I have a lot of fond memories living there, growing up and riding my bike there when I was younger, and even still. I love the access to many of the features in the area, the shopping areas and the neighbors, and the soccer field across the street from Barrow. But I also have a lot of fond memories of being involved with the neighborhood association there, who has had some very great leaders involved with them that championed for things like having a traffic light installed, having the community garden that we helped to maintain, organizing parties and Christmas and block events and cleaning up events. And I know through their involvement in my childhood and even today, I have benefited greatly. Having that experience and having that exposure to that level of leadership made me want to be involved as well in some small way to try and help make the community, make the city better, be a collaborator. Rock Academy, like I mentioned, was an extremely positive experience, if not for just the exposure to the roadmaps and means of learning how to be involved in the city, but also in just knowing that there are people out there that truly love the city and are very positive about the city. And that in itself, I think, is a strong motivator for engaging us citizens and everyone, just knowing that there is motivation to do better and to work hard and produce something that we can all enjoy. I just want to say thank you again for everybody.
Now we're just going to take time. I'll let you handle it.
Now we'll call the names of each of the graduates that are here, and then after that, we've got a few that are unable to be here because of other responsibilities, and so we'll mention their names after the end. First is Miriam Armendariz Piccolo. Karen Bradford Coleman. The Honorable Denise Jones Innett. Janae Harris. And I want to say that she is one of two in our class who are spouses of other Rock Academy alums. The other one's unable to be here tonight, but Kai Imamura. Wendy Johnson. Brittany Kale. Charlotte Lundy. Synovia Mayfield. Beth Quarles. Stephen Robertson. Vanya Strickland. Jessica Tolliver. And Sarah Vestal. And then those who are unable to be here this evening were Lisa Carver, Rachel Kottner, Ashley Kersey, Jeffrey Malm, and Anna Matei.
Let's give them all a round of applause. Again, we just want to say thank you to this third cohort of graduates on residents obtaining community knowledge and what you're doing in regards to civic engagement for your city. And we just appreciate you and all that you're doing to help move our city forward. We're excited that we'll be doing another cohort For Little Rock residents that are interested in attending a Future Rock Academy, please sign up at littlerock.gov/Rock Academy. Email confirmations will be sent before the classes begin. The next cohort will start in spring 2022. Now to the newly minted Rock Academy graduates, feel free to please stay and watch the board meeting, or if you had other plans to go home, we understand that as well. But again, we just say thank you and appreciate you. Madam Clerk, we have one modification for tonight's agenda, item M1, that will set the new board boundaries.
Move to add the second resolution M1.
There's a motion from Vice Mayor Hines, and a second one from Director Wright to add to the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to set December 1st, 2021 as the date of public hearing regarding the sources and uses of funds provided in the 2021 CDBG Home and HUPL funds from the United States government and for the purposes. A resolution to set December 21st, 2021 as the date of public hearing regarding the proposed uses of the Home ARP American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funding and the amended sources of the uses provided in the 2021 CDBG Home and HUPL funds from the United States government and for other purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with J.A. Riggs in the total amount of $175,104.21 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of one Caterpillar excavator for the Parks and Recreation Department and for other purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with J.A. Riggs in a total amount of $127,496 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of one Caterpillar dozer for the Parks and Recreation Department and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Clear Creek Golf Cart and utility vehicles in the total amount of $72,218.75 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of 7 club car utility carts for the Little Rock Zoo and for the purposes. A resolution to require that the 2021 audit be performed in accordance with the guidelines and format prescribed by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and the United States Government Accountability Office and for the purposes. A resolution authorized the use of Omna Partners as an option for the acquisition of commodities and services for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for other purposes. A resolution authorized the use of National Purchasing Partners as an option for the acquisition of commodities and services for the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. A resolution authorized the mayor and city clerk to execute a third amendment to the lease agreement between the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and the Oakland Fraternal Historic Cemetery Park Board as lessors and the Little Rock School District as lessees to extend the lease for one additional one-year term and to approve the basic annual rent for the year 2022 in the amount of $13,800 and for the purposes. A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into a 5-year installment purchase agreement with Axon Enterprises Incorporated, utilizing the National Purchasing Partners Cooperative Purchasing Agreement for a total cost of $1,201,545.50 plus applicable taxes and fees for the purchase of 360 Taser 7 devices and related equipment for the Little Rock Police Department and for the purposes. A resolution to appoint commissioners for the Quapaw Central Business Improvement District Number 5 of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
Move for the adoption of the consent agenda.
There's a motion. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Mayor, I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like for Mr. Moore, I know there's been some changes to the award maps from the first and second meeting, and I would like Mr. Moore to briefly tell the residents what the changes have been since their meetings, because there were several that was wanting some changes made, and I don't think they was made, but I would like for them to know what changes were made. Thank you.
And Director Aycock, I don't think that was added to the consent agenda, so I don't think we went through that item yet. I'm prepared to go through it, but what the city clerk just read did not include that item at this point, I believe.
I
No,
know
it
it
did
did
not.
not include that, but it did include some changes. And the people in Ward 6 and 7 are wondering why their changes was not included and other changes were included.
And again, I'm prepared to go through that. My only point is right now, what's before you all is just the consent agenda, and M1 was not added to the consent agenda. So I believe the mayor at some point we will go to that, but it was not read.
At the time it's added to the consent agenda, I would like for you to make comments on what has
will.
been added to that.
I will.
Thank you.
We had a motion second. We also already heard the ayes. All those,
Is there some discussion? I'd like to ask a question on a couple of these.
sure,
And just make sure I understand, the first resolution with CDBG and home funds, is there a total yet, or do we know what that amount is?
There is, and Director Miller, this is one of those sort of unique items, one, and two, where today, what you're doing today is actually just setting the date for the hearing on the 21st. So this Friday, I will send you the actual resolution outlining the expenditures.
Oh, okay.
This is just, for 1 and 2, is just setting the date to be heard on the 21st. So you'll see that on Friday.
The amount of money.
Correct.
For these two resolutions. And the second resolution, the American Rescue Plan, home funds, that's different from the tranche of American Rescue money that.
We're an entitlement city based on our size. And so that is a whole separate pool of money. And it's the same thing, we'll have that all outlined for you on Friday.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. That's the only questions I have.
no problem. Thank you so much. We've already heard the ayes. Any opposed?
I don't think we took a vote yet. I think
We heard the
had
ayes.
We
just didn't
we
hear
took
the
a vote.
nays.
We heard the ayes.
Okay, I
Are there
apologize.
any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now go to citizens' communication. Ms. Loretta Hendricks.
Good evening to the City of Little Rock, the Board of Directors, and good evening to you, Mayor. I have my message already written here. Director Irma Fingers Hendricks, a servant leader of the working people of Ward 1, proposed throughout her tenure the elimination of at-large positions. As proposed by Director Hendricks, the majority report upholds elimination of all at-large positions, thereby one man, one vote. Furthermore, at-large positions hinder equal representation under government, signifying an unlawful suppression of the vote, as well restricting economic prosperity for all of Little Rock's people and Little Rock goodwill. Director Irma Hendricks proposed placing on the 2022 November election ballot the initiative, elimination of all at-large positions. Before the people, let the people of Little Rock decide. Finally, I am not Virgil Miller. I am Loretta Jo Hendricks, the daughter of the former city director, Ward 1, Irma Fingers Hendricks. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, if you would please read item number 12.
A resolution to authorize the mayor and city manager to enter into a public service agreement with the unincorporated town of Camac Village to provide 911 emergency dispatch services and for other purposes.
Move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion from Vice Mayor Hines, a second from Director Richardson. Director Adcock, I see your hand.
Yes. Mr. Mayor and Mr. Moore, last week I asked for a itemized list of the cost to the citizens of Little Rock for this service, as well as number 12 and 13, and I did not receive that.
Mr. Moore.
There is a cost to the citizens for us to give Camac Village this service, and I would like to know what that cost is.
Mr. Moore.
Dr. Adcock, I sent a memo Friday that outlined that, and according to the fire department, the current cost is $13,000 per year, plus we receive some turnback fees, which is about $4,500.
For 12 and 13? I think at a time when we're telling the people in Little Rock that there's 311 calls are not being answered because we are short of employees, but then we outsource some of our services to other areas. I don't think that's quite fair to the residents of Little Rock.
And I'm not sure why you didn't get this, but just to sort of put it in perspective, that this is just sort of year-to-date calls, number of dispatched police calls for service, 285. Camac Village Police responded 275 of those times. Little Rock responded 10 times, and the fire department responded 35 times. So it's really less than 1% of the number of calls that we respond to.
Thank you.
There's a motion second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 13.
A resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into an intergovernmental police services assistance agreement with the unincorporated town of Camac Village to provide law enforcement services and for the purposes, and for the purposes, period.
Move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 14 for the first time.
An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to extend the contract with the Arkansas Municipal League Municipal Vehicle Program at a total cost of $950,000 to administer a self-insurance program for the City of Little Rock's motor vehicle liability insurance and for the purposes. First reading.
Move for the suspension of the rules and place this on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to extend the contract with the Arkansas Municipal League Municipal Vehicle Program at a total cost of $950,000 to administer a self-insurance program for the City of Little Rock's motor vehicle liability insurance. Second reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to declare it impractical and unfeasible to bid, to authorize the city manager to extend the contract with the Arkansas Municipal League Municipal Vehicle Program at a total cost of $950,000 to administer a self-insurance program for the City of Little Rock's motor vehicle liability insurance. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings. We have questions or comments from Director Compuris and Director Phillips. Director Compuris.
Yes, sir, please. This is just for motor vehicles, is that correct?
Mr. Moore.
That's correct. And I think I know where you're headed. Our contract with the league for litigation is set to expire. And that item Tom has been reviewing and will be on your next agenda.
Well, that is exactly where I'm heading, and I'd like to know before that time if there's a way that we could bid that out, or if this still falls under impractical and feasible to bid.
Mr. Carpenter or Mr. Moore, I believe you guys have already discussed that.
The impractical and unfeasible deals with the bidding aspect of it. As Mr. Moore indicated to you at an earlier meeting, we're really at the end of the contract and at the end of the situation. So right now we don't have much choice, but that does not preclude the board from including a clause in the ordinance that notes that we can go out to bid. And
Well, I would like to pursue anything we can do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All those in favor, please say, well, Director Phillips, I'm sorry.
No problem, Mayor. I actually have my hand raised for number 15. I was a little early, so nothing on this item.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Item number 15.
An ordinance to provide for and to adopt the 2022 budget for the City of Little Rock, Arkansas for the period beginning January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2022, to appropriate resources and uses for every expenditure item and fund, to declare an emergency and for the purposes first reading.
Members of the board, in an effort to ensure that each of you have as much time as possible to continue to review the budget, we will not proceed with a second reading, but what I will ask is for our Chief Financial Officer, Sarah Linehan, to please approach the podium to do a very brief overview of any highlights, to redo highlights within the budget for the members of the board. Also, opportunity for any additional questions. We'll do the second reading at a later date.
If you all could pull up maybe the December or the November 16th presentation and then have the November 9th available as well. We've spent quite a bit of time. I know we went through the detailed presentation for about 2 hours on November 9th with all of the individual items. And then on the 16th, we came back and increased the across-the-board salary increase for all employees to 2%. That was the only change included in the presentation on November 16th. Both of the presentations are on the city's website. On the finance page of the website, as you scroll down, both are there in their entirety for Little Rock residents to see. If we go to page 8 of the November 16th presentation, this is a summary of the budgeted funds. The total adopted budget would be $288,913,693. 77% or $222 million of that is for the general fund. $23,627,000 or 8% is the street fund. $23,777 million or another 8% is the waste disposal fund. We have one internal service fund, the fleet fund, $14,920,000. The expenses incurred in that fund are for our vehicle maintenance and of our vehicle fleet and for fuel and for repairs. And the revenues in that fund are primarily from charges to the other funds for those services. The vehicle storage fund is an enterprise fund. It operates as a business. It has a $1.9 million budget representing 1%. And then we have a parking garage fund that operates the parking garages, the convention garage at 2nd and Main and the River Market garage in downtown Little Rock, and that represents 1%. It is also an enterprise fund, as is the waste disposal fund. On the next page, page 9, you'll see the total expenditures by fund. $287,541,393 with the same applicable percentages for each fund. And if we'll move back to page 7, you can see that the revenues and expenditures in total. So the general fund is balanced, the waste disposal fund is balanced, the fleet fund is balanced, and there's net income of $518,822 proposed in the street fund, $109,600 in the vehicle storage fund, and $743,878 in the parking fund. For all of the funds except the general fund, any net income is restricted and related to the activities of that fund. The revenues of the funds other than the general fund are from sources that are restricted outside the level of this city government, and they go towards only the activities of those individual funds. And then just really quickly, if we can, on the November 9th presentation, go to page 37. And this is this just highlights the largest expenditure of the city government, which is our full-time personnel cost. The budget provides for 2,216 full-time employees, of which the police and the fire and 911 services make up 1,192, or 53.8% of the total employee count. With another 362 full-time employees in our street fund and our waste disposal fund. Parks and Zoo makes up 193,000 or 193 employees, 8.7%. Our housing and neighborhood programs has 99 employees, and 4.5% of the total. Fleet and vehicle storage have 76 employees, making up 3.4%, and all other city departments our 294 full-time employees are 13.3%. The spreadsheets and the slides give a very detailed analysis of the changes in the budget from the previous year, and so I'm happy to take any additional questions. I know we had questions last week about part-time, and the city manager sent out a memo in response to that yesterday, but I'm happy to address any of those or answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Linehan. We have Director Phillips had the first question or comment.
Yeah, my comment was not a question to Director Linehan. Mayor, I would like to make a motion, excuse me, take my mask off, make a motion to amend this budget to include optional health insurance for the city board members. We'll look for a second from one of my colleagues.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
There's a roll call.
Mayor,
Director Miller.
yeah, I'd like to have some discussion first, because I'd like to understand a little bit more about this, what it entails, what, you know, there's some more detail about it before I take a vote. I'd like to, like, if it's Director Phillips or if it's the city attorney or whoever can talk a little bit more about this, give me a little understanding about what we're voting on.
Director Phillips, I believe, made the motion, or would we like the city attorney?
You've already called for the vote and gotten one, and you've called for the roll call, and you're not supposed to discuss until the vote's taken.
So when you have a motion and you have a second, there's no discussion before there's a vote?
There was a vote taken, and then there was a call for a roll call based upon the voice vote.
Director
That was
Pierce.
rushed. I mean,
I understand. I'm just saying that because the vote had been taken.
Okay, I understand. I vote present.
Well, there's an easier way to do that.
I'd like to expunge the vote.
Yeah.
There's a motion from Director Pierce to expunge the vote. There's a second from Director Wright. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. The vote.
Mayor, point of order. On an expungement vote, it must be unanimous.
Mr. Parliamentarian.
And Mayor, while the parliamentarian is looking at those rules, do you mind explaining to the public what just happened?
So everyone at the public, from a parliamentary standpoint, when a motion and a second has been made to add an amendment to the existing ordinance, there's then a call for the vote. There was no hands up for discussion, and so we called before the vote. The chair could not decipher between the yeas and the nays. There was a roll call vote called. Prior to the vote being called, Director Compuris then did another parliamentary procedure to ask to expunge the vote, and that has been made. There was then a point of order from Vice Mayor Hines stating a point of order, and we're waiting to see from the parliamentary if that point of order was correct.
My hand was raised for a question.
On the point of order, the answer is that it only takes a majority vote to expunge a vote. There is a different procedure for reconsideration where it has to be unanimous if it's not given with notice, but that's not this.
So point of order was made by Vice Mayor Hines. He thought that it would take a unanimous vote. The parliamentarian reviewed the rules. That is incorrect for this particular measure, and the parliamentarian has ruled against the point of order. So the vote has been expunged. There's a motion. There has been a second on the table. The vote was expunged. We now have a question from Director Miller for discussion. Director Miller.
Yes, well, generally speaking, when there is a motion and there's a second before the vote is taken, I think there should be a question asked about discussion. And if there's no discussion, then a vote can be taken. I just wanted to have some discussion from Director Phillips to explain just a little bit about this so I could have some basis for making my vote. And so that's what I'm asking for. That's all. I'm just asking for some discussion.
And you have that, Director Miller.
Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to restate the motion and explain why I made the motion. Put simply, the amendment to the budget, my understanding would allow each of the board members, the 10 of us, the option to opt in to the city's health insurance as city employees. My understanding of that cost collectively would be, based on information with city staff, $50,000 for all 10 of us, assuming we all opt in. So this just amending the budget to give us the option to opt in as city employees on the health insurance. So with that being stated, unless there's anything else from anyone else, I'll restate my motion to amend the budget as just stated.
And would the amendment to the motion be $50,000? What would?
Yeah, absolutely. The amendment to the budget would be $50,000 and give each one of us the opportunity to opt in. And then the real cost will depend on whether we decide to opt in or not, but the budget would need to be $50,000.
Okay, thank you.
Director Adcock.
Yes. Mr. Carpenter,
Yes, ma'am.
did you look into this? Is this something you're allowed to do? I know that there's, I'm for one that are not interested in this. But if some of my board members are interested in it, I have no problem with that. But I think this is part of compensation.
Director Adcock, I did look into it. There's 4 ordinances that have dealt with compensation of the board since the Vision Little Rock 731 plan was put into place. That allows the board to be compensated. The initial action was taken by the voters in saying that could be done. Amendments are made by the board of directors. The board has passed it where that there's a $250 a month office allowance, essentially, and then there's an $18,000 a year salary for each board member. The mayor, by statute, is compensated in a different manner. And so what would have to be done to allow the board members to be part of the insurance plan would be to amend the insurance plan. And that doesn't necessarily take board action. But this will be compensation, so then there's a question of how to deal with the disparity. If a person is $5,000, I'm just using a figure, and opts to be a part of the insurance program, then that's how the $5,000 is spent. But if they don't become a part of the insurance program, you need to make sure that Director A and Director B are still being compensated at the same level. So what happens to their $5,000?
Okay, thank you.
Director Wright?
Mayor, that was going to be my question. What if we opt not to participate? What would happen to the allocation that we would be entitled to regarding insurance? I would prefer that go toward my retirement plan, APRS, rather than have insurance, because I have state insurance. And I don't think the city's insurance is better than what I have. So I would not be interested in making that change, but I would be interested in a payment into my retirement plan. Is that something that's possible, Mr. Carpenter?
Director Wright, APRS is a different animal, and I don't know.
I know the city pays into APRS for some employees, is that correct?
I think the judges are paid into APRS that way. There may be a few others, but not generally does the city pay into APRS. There may be some clerks. I'm looking for Stacy, and I can't see a head nod, but I think that's...
Ashley, if you could get Stacy.
I seem to recall
there are a few employees.
that there are some city employees that receive that benefit.
Right.
And if that's an option for this measure, as I said, anybody that would like to opt in for the insurance, I think that would be something that would be good to provide.
And I don't know the answer to that question. That would be a question to be asked of APRS.
Mayor, I do have a question.
I need to
for Mr. Carpenter.
One second, we'll get to you, Mr. Moore. Director Wright had a question, Mr.
About whether or not the allocation that I would be entitled to, if the board approves an opt-in for the city board members, would I be able to have that paid into my APRS retirement plan?
Mr. Manager, could you explain that?
Well, this is the first I understood from Tom. Are we saying that if this is approved, that and Director Phillips, after doing some more work, the cost is a little under $7,000 per. It was $5,000 when we first started with part-time employees. But are we saying, Tom, that if this is approved, that the board members who do not opt into the plan also would be compensated at that $7,000 additional level?
Right, and that was the point I was trying to make at the staff meeting earlier today, that if we merely change the plan to allow the elected officials, which for Little Rock now only includes the board of directors, to opt into the plan, then they can use the money they're already paid as part of their board salary to do that. If we add it for some persons, then that's compensation, it's taxable, and we're going to need to be able to make sure that all 11 members of all other 10 members of the board are paid the same amount.
Ms. Witherell.
Director Witherell, if you could address Director Wright's question.
Mayor Scott, Board of Directors. We do have several employee groups that participate in the APRS, as was stated previously, the judges and the city clerks. And the APRS plan covers specific positions and classifications. Off the top of my head, I do not believe your position as a board director would fall into an APRS plan. However, it would need additional review.
I would like to have that review if we move forward with this. Or I'd just like to know. because I think that would be a benefit package that would be something more beneficial to, I know, me rather than health insurance.
Understood. It would be up to the APERS plan to determine whether you are in an eligible position. But we can definitely.
So can you find that
look at-
out, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Hines, then Director Kathy Webb, and then Director Computers.
Thank you. And having a discussion with Dr. Phillips earlier this morning, I'm generally not supportive of doing this. I previously didn't support the pay raise we gave ourselves the last time go around. So I know when I ran for office what the pay was, what the job was, and that's what I signed on for. I think it sets bad precedent for this board to be giving ourselves a pay raise at the very last minute when it's obvious from the amount of part-time personnel we're using. If we're part-time employees and on an administrative point, much like a full-time employee in a business, the number of hours we work is really not relative to what we're doing as elected officials. So some weeks it's more, some weeks it's less. I just don't feel, and especially hearing that it's 7,000, that's about a 33% increase in our pay. And I'm in favor if we want to keep our pay where it is and allow folks to opt in and pay for health insurance with that money that we're already paid. That's probably not a bad idea, but I'm not in for increasing our wages or salary to cover health insurance. Thank you.
Director Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was not in favor of this in the first place, but after Mr. Moore just said that, and Tom talked about it, and that everybody would be entitled to something, to echo what Vice Mayor Hines said, we'd be giving ourselves more than a 33% pay raise. And there's no way I can justify voting for something like that, especially at the last second and at the time when we're short-staffed. We've just talked about how much of a raise we're going to give city employees, but to give ourselves more than 33% pay raise is ludicrous in my opinion, so I will not be voting for this.
Director Computers.
Actually, I'm going to stand down for a minute, and I'd like to see what Director Phillips has got to say to these comments.
Director Phillips.
I appreciate being called on by Director Computers. Make sure to do that in the future. The information I received originally from city staff was that it was going to be a $5,000 amount. I understand that more information was learned and it was a little bit more than that. Definitely understand that point of view. Doesn't change the motion. I do hear what Director Webb and Hines and Wright have mentioned. I think those are valid points, but I don't think it's unfair for us to ask for that. And I'm not ashamed that I'm asking for it. I work hard as a city director. I think all of us do more than part-time work. It is a benefit, and I think we have the ability to do it. And if my colleagues want to say no, everyone has the right to say no. To Director Vice Mayor Hines' point about the option to opt in, I guess I would want the city manager to kind of advise, or maybe Director Hines, Vice Mayor Hines, to explain the distinction of keeping the current salary and opting into the plan as opposed to increasing the budget and opting into the plan. I don't know if I understand that distinction. So if either Vice Mayor Hines or the city manager can explain that to me, I want to make sure I understand that distinction.
Right now, the elected body can't be a part of the city's healthcare plan. That would take an amendment of the plan itself. But being a part of the plan doesn't take official action. Paying for for the part of the plan raises the second question.
Oh, and that's what okay, so that makes sense. I understand that. Do we know, or Mr. Moore, can you get us the numbers on the distinction between the two on the individual costs for someone to opt in, or is that someone know that information now?
Ms. Witherell, Director Witherell.
I do not have the total cost. I think it was emailed to Tom Carpenter earlier. But again, the amount is what is set by city administration. And this year we were lucky enough that we were able to keep our premiums the same as last year. But we can get you the amount that the city pays for single coverage as well as dependent coverage, because there is an additional amount that we do pay towards dependent coverage as well. But we can get you that numbers, but I believe it was rounded up to about 7,000 annually for single coverage.
Okay, I would like to get that information, but for the sake of the clarity of the record and me standing on something that I think is that should be available to us as city board members, I'll restate my motion to amend the budget to allow city board members to opt into the health insurance plan, and would like to call the vote on that, Mayor.
Director Hines, did you raise your hand?
Yes,
Vice Mayor Hines, rather.
clarification, if we're allowing opt-in, does that mean we're increasing our compensation to opt-in, or are we going to allow an opt-in from our existing salary? Because Director Phillips, it's a simple answer to what the difference is. It's a $70,000 difference.
But no, I was asking to make sure we got the numbers in light of Mr. Moore saying that the numbers changed. That's why I asked Ms. Wetherwell. She said she'll get that information back to us. So what I'm proposing, and I get everyone's point of view, but y'all know me. I'm me. I'm not ashamed of doing what I think I need to do. So I'm doing it. I'm making a motion to amend the budget to allow for city board members to opt into the health insurance. If it fails, it fails. And no hard feelings to anyone on the board, but I'm making a motion.
Director Wright.
Okay, I'm still not clear if that question that was just asked was answered. Does this mean that our benefits would increase by 7,000 for us to pay into the insurance, or would that have to come out of the existing amount that we receive?
Members of the board, and then I'll ask Mr. Moore to add any more details. You are paid a part-time salary. I believe you get a meal stipend as well. That being stated, that is the salary that you receive. You do not receive a benefit. There's a separation between salary and benefit. And so what Director Phillips is requesting is to add a benefit to being a member of the board, not to add to your salary. Now, when you add the salary and the benefit, that is your total compensation. And so when many times in business, when we're talking about compensation, it could be salary or insurance or other retirements and things of that nature. It just depends on the situation. But he's asking to add a benefit. He's not asking to increase the salary.
Okay.
But what it would do, because you are elected officials, that is considered a benefit and it takes board action. What I also heard Vice Mayor Hines say is that he is okay with board members having access to the health insurance, utilizing the salary that they receive versus adding a benefit. Is that correct, Vice Mayor Hines?
That's correct. That's why I wanted a point of clarification from Director Phillips.
Yeah, and that's not the motion I'm making.
Yeah.
That's not the motion.
I'm just answering.
Yeah, I mean, the mayor did a great job explaining the differences. The motion I'm making is not that I think we should be able to opt in. That probably should have been an option from day one. What I'm saying is that we're covered under the city's plan that's supposed to opt in, paying that full amount ourselves. That's my motion.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second from Director Richardson. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nays have it. All right. I believe we have Director Wrights.
Yes. Mayor, can we have a roll call?
City Clerk, roll call.
Director Miller,
No.
Director Richardson,
Present.
Director Webb,
No.
Director Peck, Director Wright, Director Wyrick,
No.
Director Compuris, Director Phillips,
Yes.
Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Hines.
No.
Director Richardson, would you like to change your vote?
No, I would not like to change it.
It's 1 for, 7 against, and 1 absent, and 1 present.
All right. Any more questions regarding the budget before we move to item number 16? Director Adcock?
Yes. Sarah? Oh. We've received information today on the part-time employment. The last sheet of that was a spreadsheet, and I have questions on that spreadsheet.
Okay, just a second. Okay.
I noticed that we are spending less on the police than we have for the last 3 years. Is that correct?
The $14,000 reclassification to 911 because 911 was separated as a separate department. That's the portion that was attributed to 911. So you see the decrease of 14,000 on police and the increase of 14,000 for 911.
So we are not decreasing the police?
No, we are not.
Okay, the first item on here is an increase. It goes from 53,000 to 138,000, and that's for part-time employees. That would hire lots of full-time employees. So explain to me why we are doing just about a triple of part-time employees.
Director Linehan, Director Adcock, can you let us know what you're looking at? Because I would like to be on the same page as you. What?
Yes, as I said, the part-time memo that we got from Mr. Moore.
Okay.
This was the end sheet of it.
I have that. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you're looking at. Thank you.
But Director Adcock, the question you're asking, that was between the 2019 and the 2020 budget. That has nothing to do with the 2022 budget. Director Hines had requested the 4-year history, which was provided, but the changes between the 2021 budget and the 2022 budget are highlighted in the change column with a description of each of those changes.
But since 2019, we have increased that much. How many employees do we have on part-time?
In total?
In total?
It changes all the time. I think we did provide, though, an answer. Currently, we have, hold on, I think there were 600 and, question 11, on page 2 of the memo, there are currently, not currently, but throughout the year, from the beginning of the year till now, not all of them are still active, there have been 642 part-time employees that have received pay. And of those, 536 have earned less than $10,000 because most of those are summer youth or temporary type of employees.
Seasonal? So
Seasonal at the zoo or Parks and Rec, mowing or weed lot or summer youth programs. They're temporarily needed employees.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Director Hines? Yes. Vice Mayor Hines, I'm sorry.
Sarah, and this is something we talked about in the previous budget. So, and Mayor, I don't want to belabor this. Are we going to have a discussion at our agenda meeting next week? Because I've got some questions for the fire chief based on this part-time information as well on their $221,000?
We have the time right now, and we have and we'll have it as much as possible. I want to make sure, again, reiterating to the members of the board, we're not doing a second reading today to ensure that there's discussion today and more time to review the budget between this meeting and the next scheduled budget meeting. But at every meeting, our department directors are here available for budget questions. They have been since November 9th. You see many of them in the room. Chief Hubbard is here, so if Chief Hubbard, Director Witherell, if you'll get Chief Hubbard.
And I'll get a question for Sarah too. So Sarah, I remember we were having a discussion on the workers' comp being increased on the fire department, and you said it was related to the legislation on the legislation that was passed in the legislature on the cancer and dread diseases related to firefighting.
I believe that does have some of the impact. Yes,
Okay,
that's
so-
part of it. Mhm.
So I was informed today by some of the folks in some of the legislators that passed that ordinance that it specifically does not go into workers' comp. The only thing that legislation addressed was additional leave when you have that. That legislation doesn't, because they said they made decided efforts not to impact workers' comp because of denials and that. So we might want to run that to ground and take a closer look at why our workers' comp's up. I think it's up because we've been working a lot of overtime. We've had a lot of on-the-job injuries in the fire department over the last year and a half with all the overtime we've been working. But that's just my inkling of why our workers' comp's going up. And Chief may be able to tell us more about that. But I had some questions for the Chief about the additional $221,000 for the part-time for his department, since it was the biggest portion of the increase.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Vice Mayor Hines, what was your question again, if you don't mind, sir?
So, as we looked at this draw to part-time, your department's going to get roughly $221,000 increase for part-time, and it listed the description of the change as addition of part-time EMTs and training staff per the budget presentation we had on the 9th of November. So my question, two parts. Where are those part-time EMTs going to be working? Are they running a training school, or are they going to be on the street? And then on the training staff, and I hope the answer is the additional training staff on a part-time basis is going to be so we can run 2 recruit schools next year.
I'll go to question number 2 first. You are correct. That is what those part-time training instructors will be utilized for the 2 recruit classes per year. The first question you asked in regards to the EMTs, these are going to be part-time individuals. We already have the alternative response vehicles we were able to acquire through grant funding this calendar year. Now all we needed was the resources to staff those particular units and put them in service to address the emergency medical calls that we respond to.
Okay, so on those new EMTs, are they going to be existing firefighters that are working overtime, or are they going to be new part-time employees, or what's the plan, and how many are we going to have? I know you guys have bought several vehicles, so how many are we going to have with this budget?
That is correct. We're looking at part-time individuals that will be EMT only. They will not be overtime firefighters. We will hire approximately 14 individuals to staff these units.
And are they going to be covered under, are they going to be firefighters? Are they going to be covered under union contract, or are they going to be at will part-time? Have y'all worked through the details of that yet?
Yes, so I've spoken with Human Resources as well as LAFI, the retirement agency that represents the firefighters. Because they will not be certified firefighters, they will go under the city's retirement funding. If that's the case, they would not be LAFI employees, to your question.
Would it be similar to what we do with the gray shirt folks over in LRPD, I guess?
I'm not familiar with that process, sir.
Maybe Bruce or Mayor, if you guys could get me an answer on that, if this new EMT program is going to be similar to how we're running the gray shirts in LRPD, the folks that are taking calls and responding to traffic accidents.
We'll get that information for you, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And Thanks for putting that second recruit class in.
Director Computers.
Could you, well, not an easy one for me, but could you go over your rationale for the allocation of the Museum of Discovery and why it's lower? And then a request after that.
Well, I don't think.
I can explain that. On the Museum of Discovery this year, the board passed an amendment of an additional $175,000 due to the mold and flood damage associated with the snowstorm. It was not for the normal operation. It was a one-time to help with recovery for that process and so the allocation for the Museum of Discovery is unchanged from the original operating allocation in the current budget.
How does it compare to a year ago?
It's the same.
I will probably make a motion later on tomorrow, next week about upping that.
And Director Computers, you can make a motion today as well.
Let me see, the outside agency contributions are shown. Let me find the page.
I think it's 56.
Okay, page 56 of the November 9th.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. I was looking for page 54. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, 54.
And members of the board and public who may not understand Director Computers' question, during the previous 2020 budget year, there was some impromptu emergency capital expenditures requested by the Museum of Discovery. And many times, and this will go into something that happened here in another couple weeks, we made that expenditure. We paid that expenditure. And so that then goes into the independent agency's budget. So essentially, the budget was passed at X dollar. An event happened, an emergency event. We made a decision to comply with that emergency event. So that line item increases. But when we have budget amendments throughout the year, the budget amendment reconciles to ensure that we stay within the budget. And so we were able to do that. However, when you see on a year-to-year scale, you'll notice that there was a difference. And so if one may not recall that happened, it'll show an increase in one year and it'll look like a decrease, but it's not a decrease because we made the decision of the budget amendment. So essentially, it's unchanged.
Well, and if you look at line 4, it shows that the change from the amended budget is the decrease of $175,000, and the footnote says the decrease in the Museum of Discovery is associated with the extra allocation for flood damage due to the 2021 snowstorm. The next column shows the change from the original budget, and it's unchanged. But I was incorrect. It's actually an increase from the 2020 budget. It's the same as the 2019. The 2020 budget, because of the onset of COVID, all of the outside agency contributions were reduced during a period of time when operation was closed. There was a 40-day, or 120-day, suspension of funding.
Thank you. And the second thing is, Stacy was very nice to talk to me about a couple of things I had. And I would like to, if you don't mind, talk to Stacy and Sarah together and go over some budget items that I don't understand, and then I can present them back to you later on.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sarah, if you will get with Stacy and work to get a good date for Director Computers to sit down with him to answer some of his questions. Director Adcock?
Yes. Mayor, in the paper this morning, there was an article about 2 new jobs posting that went out last month for 2 part-time positions in the Little Rock Office of Executive Administration, one paying $20 an hour and one paying $28 an hour. Now, we have lots of wonderful city employees, full-times that give lots of their time to the city, and they're not making $20 or $28 an hour. So why would we advertise 2 part-time people for $20 and $28 an hour?
Director Adcock, if you recall, In any positions from an HR perspective, there's always a range. I believe the news article from Mr. Flaherty, it said up to an amount. That does not necessarily mean that's the amount that is being paid. We have 2,216 full-time employees, and there's always a range of the salary that they could make, but that's not the salary that they usually make. And same within part-time. So those individuals will not make 20 or 28. They could make up to if they're even hired.
Would you explain to us what these two positions are, please?
Yes, in an effort to, as you shared, as you just noticed, we had the third cohort of the Rock Academy. Since we've been in office, we've increased a lot of civic engagement efforts for the city of Little Rock and the members of the board of directors in an effort to always be accountable and clear and responsive to the residents of the city of Little Rock. You all may not realize the number of constituent phone calls and requests that the city receives. The Office of Executive Administration, it is our charge to represent the city as well as the members of the board of directors as it relates to constituent concerns that come our way. Many times they're requesting many of your wards to get certain things done that you are never aware of unless someone contacts you directly, and then you contact Ms. Ashley, who handles that for you. And so what we are working to do is to continue to be more responsive to the residents of the city of Little Rock to ensure that we get all of their responses, whether it's a yes or no, or I don't know, and we're going to try to figure it out as quickly as possible.
Okay, and the second position?
Both of those are related to that.
Both of those are related to that?
Yes, ma'am.
Part-time positions?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Director Wright?
Mayor, regarding the explanation that you just gave, so you're saying that our constituents are calling City Hall and that information is not being forwarded to us through our board liaison?
No, ma'am.
Because I don't want my constituents to call here and then I not be notified that they've called and that they have a concern or that they want me to address, because that's what you just said, that you're saying that they're calling here with concerns and issues that we never know about.
Director Wright, the city of Little Rock represents 202,000 residents. There are many times that a resident calls because of a 311 issue or a 911 issue, a police issue, a public works issue, a parks issue, a code enforcement issue that may happen in your ward. They are not calling, asking for Director Wright. They're asking for the city to address the issue. And so what I'm saying is, if there's an issue, if a resident in any member of the ward calls, we respond to that call on behalf of the city of Little Rock, as well as you. Now, there are many times that you all encounter residents throughout your normal day, your normal life, and you want something done. You generally work with the city manager to get that done, and or you send an email or a note to Ms. Ashley, and Ms. Ashley coordinates that with the department directors. And so what we're saying is, any phone call, no one's keeping that from you. It's just we're responding to residents.
That's not what it sounds like. I will not be supportive of that in the budget, but I've already told you I have questions and concerns about this budget. And it just seems like we're being marginalized in our wards, and my constituents want to engage with me. So I can't do that if the information, them calling here, and if that's not forwarded to me. So I would not know that.
Director Wright, let me again walk through everyone through this. It's not that they're not calling you. They literally call 501-371. Director, Mr. Moore, what's Lori's phone number?
4436.
All right. What's Takia's phone number?
4410, I'm sorry.
What's Takia's phone number?
371-4510.
Bridget's phone number is 371-4744. Then there's a main number. Residents call all day, every day. And they're not saying, I'm a Ward 6 resident. They're not saying I'm a Ward 1 resident. They're saying they're a resident of the city of Little Rock and they have an issue, and we respond.
But if it's somebody in Ward 6, I feel like I need to know about that. And you've just said that that information is not being forwarded to us.
We can begin, we'll probably need more employees to respond to every
No,
person.
I don't think we do. I think we have a board assistant, and if we need an additional board assistant for us as board members, then that's what we need. But
And that's fine
I
too.
don't feel that I should not be advised and informed if an issue is being addressed in my ward.
That's not the case, Director Wright, but that's not the case. Going next, Director Warwick. Warwick, right?
Yeah, that's,
Sorry about the mask. Maybe that's it.
that's okay. I agree with Doris, Director Wright. I get phone calls from constituents. I also get them from Ashley. Now, Ashley takes care of a lot of them, but she's very good to forward information to me and say, so-and-so's called about this, you know, and we kind of work together on what the solution is. But many times I get phone calls and they'll say, well, I've talked to everybody in the city and I couldn't get any help, and so I'm calling you. So if you're taking phone calls and they don't necessarily like what your answer is, and then they're reinventing the wheel and they're coming to me, and then I'm going back someplace else, it just seems like it would be great if we coordinated those efforts so everybody has the answer instead of reinventing the wheel and jacking up our departments about this ditch or that right of way or whatever. So I'm with Doris. I think that we need to know what our constituents are asking.
And again, maybe I'm not communicating effectively. That is happening. Generally, and you'll have to ask Ms. Ashley, generally when she gets a phone call, it's directly related to each of you. And is that correct, Ms. Ashley? And so when she receives a phone call, it's someone calling seeking assistance for Director B.J. Wyrick. Someone's calling assistance for directors wards 1 through 7 because she's on the website as the board liaison. So they contact her when they are trying to get to you specifically. Now, when Jane Doe has put in a 311 request for a new trash can, and let's say there's a glitch in the systems for 311, many times they are not going to call Miss Ashley. They're going to call somewhere on the second floor and or Public Works directly. They're not asking for a ward member. They're asking for a solution to their problem. And we are responding to those solutions. So again, members of the board, we are not sharing information. We are responding to residents' complaints and concerns.
Well, I get those same calls about 311 not responding, and I just think it's a duplicated effort. If you're doing calls and you're not telling us, and those people are calling us, and then we're going back through the various departments to get help, Ashley is working on things too. So I just think it's better if we all know what the issues are out there. So I'm not going to belabor it anymore. I'm with Doris. I think we need to know.
And you are correct. You will know, as you always are. But I think it's not realistic that 1,000 phone calls are going to be rerouted to the members of the board when they're not asking specifically. They're just literally asking for a solution to the problem. And so that's what's been going on. Mr. Moore, how long have you been on the city board? As city manager? This is nothing new.
Well, I haven't been on the city board, but yeah, almost started my 19th year.
What'd you say? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
About to start my 19th year in about 2 weeks, I think.
Right. And Mr. Moore will make sure, again, to continue to make sure you're all aware of what's going on. But this, again, this is nothing new. This is just in an effort to help all of our constituents, which are the 202,000 people here in the city of Little Rock.
And just on that point, Mayor, I'll ask a question. I'm hearing, I'm not a ward director, so I definitely respect my colleagues' concerns. But could we make sure that these people that we're hiring can help streamline this conversation that we're having, that if there is the auspice of confusion, can these people help coordinate these efforts?
Yes, and I believe Ms. Ashley would love to work with them, and that would not be an issue. Again, it's an effort to ensure that everyone is responsive to the residents of the city of Little Rock. We want to all be responsive to the residents of the city of Little Rock. All right. Seeing no other
I have a quick question.
I got my hand up.
Oh,
I do too.
all right. Director, Vice Mayor Hines?
So Mayor, I'm glad to hear that we're trying to improve our constituent services and everything, but we've got a 311 system that is both call-in and logged. And if they're calling into and I know that the city board has a system for tracking director requests. So how are these calls that come into Office of Executive Administration, are they tracked? Are you guys logging them into 311 or you're logging them into the director system? You know, and just trying to make sure we're not being duplicative of the services. And if you need more folks, I'm wondering what our 311 folks are doing. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it, is that we've got a good tracking system, and I know that the directors have a tracking system for director requests that are tracked and modified.
Mr. Moore, would you explain 311 to members of the board?
I don't need we understand 311 and we understand how the director's system works. I'm asking you, how is Office of Executive Administration logging?
We have a very similar tracking system as well as Ms. Ashley does. Members of the board, I'm just going to be blunt. The Office of Executive Administration has an onslaught of constituent requests that aren't related to specific director requests when they literally, Ms. Ashley can explain to you, when someone calls her phone number, they're calling specifically for a ward member to have a request fulfilled. There are hundreds, thousands of phone calls throughout the day, whether it is 311 or not. So there are a lot of folks who do not even, as much as we want people to utilize 311, they do not utilize 311. They still want to pick up a phone and call City Hall. They still want to send an email, and they expect an answer on behalf of the city of Little Rock. That's all we're speaking to. Director Computers? Your hand's not up? All right.
My hand's up.
Director Miller?
I don't know how this.
Director Miller, we got to figure out, I don't see yours on here, but we'll get that figured out with Ms. Andrews.
Okay, well, thank you. I mean, I had some of the same questions about the Constituent Relations Liaison and the Executive Operations Coordinator. I think they've talked about it. They made some of the same points I was going to make. But on the Constituent Relations Liaison, you know, one of the job descriptions points was to attend neighborhood association meetings. I plan on attending Ward 1 neighborhood association meetings. And if this Constituent Relations Liaison person is there also, I think it can be a little confusing. I mean, it goes both ways. Just like Director Wyrick says, and hadn't been on the board 2 months yet, but I'll get a phone call from someone who says, I've called the city, I hadn't been able to get anything done, that's why I'm calling you. So I'd love to see this thing kind of merge some with this constituent relations if we need that. But if that person's attending the neighborhood association meeting and they're representing the executive office of the city, and I'm at that meeting too, I'm not sure who these people are going to come to. I'm not sure. I think it may be a little confusing to them, but hopefully we can get this worked out. We can talk a little bit about that. And, you know, it sounds like that's what we're going to do.
Yes, and Director Miller, that is correct. But also, members of the board, there are, Director Ack, how many neighborhood associations do we have? I know you know that number.
199.
And I can promise you that all of those are not attended by leadership from the city of Little Rock, and we need to attend those. So the point is to make sure that there's a city representative always available to the residents. That's literally it. But there are 199 meetings, and none of us make it to all 199.
Yeah, I understand that, and certainly all these associations aren't as active
Exactly.
as they should be, but again, if I'm at a neighborhood association meeting and there's a representative from the mayor at that association meeting, I think that could be a little confusing, but I don't want to beat on that anymore. I think we'll talk about it some more. This executive operations coordinator, some of the job specifications was answering phone calls and routing inquiries. And I mean, it sounds like what a 311 would be doing, but travel arrangements and things. So,
and again, members of the board, everyone does not use 311. It's to be responsible to the residents. I mean,
I understand that, and that's fine.
The Office of Executive Administration is at City Hall more than 40 hours a week and respond to many different things on behalf of this city. And we're just making sure we're being more responsive to residents of Little Rock.
And I appreciate that. And I just had some questions about that. And then the other question that I had, because I've been getting a lot of phone calls and emails from some constituents asking me to advocate for the Decorative Arts Museum, the Terry Mansion. I've read in the paper before I got on this board a lot of issues that were going on with that. Maybe I just need to be briefed so that we can.
Well, actually, we got some news today, Mr. Moore and Director Linehan. Director Linehan, if you'll come up briefly.
Is it good news?
It's good news.
All right.
We wanted to share with the members of the board.
Well, I don't know that we have any definitive answers yet, but what we're working on is a budget amendment. It'll be the final budget amendment of the year that would come to you all December 14th. We'll discuss it for the December 21st meeting. You'll recall after our last budget amendment, I think we had net income in the general fund. Originally, it was $7.3 million, but we utilized $5 million for acquisition of land at the port, so that lowered it to about, I think it was $2.3 million. We've had some stronger than anticipated sales tax results in the last 2 months that exceed the forecast by about $1.4 million. We also have a grant that will, shuttered venue grant, that's going to take some of the expenditures out of the zoo to reimburse. And so we have some funds. We also have some additional expenditures that we have to take care of. But one of the items that we want to include in the budget amendment is a $500,000 allocation to hopefully be matched by some private donations for capital improvements at the Terry House.
Thank you. That is good news. And Mayor, let me ask you, I don't want to be out of order here.
And also, being responsive to members of the board, you want to share the other amount?
Well, I mean, there's other things we're still working on, but there's the $100,000 for Daisy Bates capital improvements. Is that what you're referring to?
No, Mr. Moore, do you have the exact number for targeted community development?
No. We're still working on the numbers to see what the total would be, but there would be an allocation for targeted community development as well. I'm waiting on some final answers to come in on a couple of other things.
So just want to make sure the board was aware we wanted to be responsive to many of your requests, and we've been following a lot of the issues with the Terry Mansion and the deeds and who owns what, but we felt it was imperative that we honor the history of the Terry Mansion and figure out a solution and work with the family there. And also want to pay special honor to City Director Peck, who's been heavily involved in a lot of those discussions along with the city manager and how we come to this resolution. So I know Director Peck is not here, but wanted to publicly acknowledge her for her hard work as well.
Thanks.
There are other expenditure needs that are also coming out of it, though. For example, there's a $1 million stormwater issue at the zoo that's a environmental issue that we have to provide for as well. So I don't want everybody to be spending the money before we bring forward the amendment.
Director Adcock.
Mayor, I wasn't through.
Oh, you went through, Director Mill? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my sea legs. I'm trying to figure out how this process works. Sorry, Director Adcock. I'm just trying to finish my thoughts. I'm not as quick it takes me a little minute to get all my thoughts out. And this may not be appropriate at this time, Mayor. That's why I wanted to ask you about the American Rescue Plan update. It's not in the budget, but it sort of affects some of the things that we can do with unbudgeted money. And so I wanted to ask some questions about that, but if it's not the right time, I'll save my questions.
I believe, do you have some of that information with you, Director Linehan?
Well, there was a memo that was distributed on how the first tranche, the process or the progress on the first tranche spending.
And that's where I have some questions about that.
Okay.
Mr. Moore can answer those questions as well.
Is it appropriate to talk about that now?
Let's talk about the finances of the city of Little Rock.
Okay, thank you. And City Manager, it's about the memo that came out on December 3rd, and this could be a quick answer. But there were two resolutions as I have read this thing, one on August the 3rd and then one on August the 17th, stating the intended use of the money. And so we received 18.8 something million, but the maximum amount intended on that August 17th resolution came up to 17.9 million. And so maybe that first resolution addressed this missing $923,000. And so maybe you can tell me where that missing 923 is, and maybe it's not missing, maybe we've already allocated.
Director Miller, that's a good question. We always knew that we were going to have to come back to the board. We knew these recommendations in August didn't total the exact amount to 18 point whatever million. So we still have to come back with that, along with in May, or before May, some recommendations on the next half.
So did we get 18.8 million or not?
We did.
We did?
We received the 18.8 million. It's deposited in a separate grant fund in its own bank account. It is earning interest. And we will be, before we expend any of those funds, a resolution is brought forward for the board to indicate the intent that it has not been fully allocated. And there is a second tranche that will come May 2022. And as the city manager said, we'll be bringing forward recommendations and taking additional requests for the expenditures on that tranche.
Well, what I'm referring to is the first tranche. And what I'm referring to is the $923,810.50 that does not show up on any one of these columns. And so if there is an additional $923,000, it should be accounted for on this report somewhere.
It has not been allocated. It's just part of the cash balance. It has not been allocated for a specific use, and there are no RFPs or RFQs out to spend it yet.
Shouldn't it show up on this report somewhere?
As unallocated, I guess it could.
Yes, I mean, I would suggest that we do that.
Okay.
Because again, when I'm looking at this, I see $923,000 that has not disappeared somewhere, and I can't account for it. That's why I was thinking maybe this resolution that was done on August the 3rd accounted for that, but I don't see it anywhere. So if there is we can add another column here to show that this money hadn't been allocated anywhere. It's not in the maximum amount intended. It's not in the amount obligated but not expended. It's
just remainder unallocated.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. That's the only questions I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Director Wright, did you have a question?
I want to put some clarity out there for the listening audience so that they understand that my concerns are that we are duplicating services and we are making our city hall too top heavy and not enough frontline people dealing with the constituents and constituent needs. We have neighborhood resource centers that started out as alert centers. In those centers, we have a facilitator. That person, now they're called neighborhood resource specialists. A part of their job is to attend the neighborhood association meetings. The listing of neighborhood associations are maintained within the Department of Housing and Neighborhood Programs. And within those neighborhood resource centers, we build those and sold those to the public as mini city halls so that they did not have to come downtown or call downtown. They could contact one of the neighborhood resource centers. And it seems like what we're doing is concentrating all constituent services within the Office of Executive Management, and that's just not the way our citizens that's not what we told our citizens we would do. We are paying for these facilities in the neighborhoods. We are paying salaries to people to attend these meetings. That is a part of their job, to attend the neighborhood association meetings. Every ward has a certain number of neighborhoods. Within my current boundaries, I have approximately 25. Half of those don't meet regularly, some meet annually, some meet monthly, some meet quarterly. Some don't meet at all. So to say that we have 199 neighborhood associations and we are hiring a person for constituent services that's going to attend all 199 meetings, that is simply not true. That is not how it happens. And we do have a city hall, city presence at every one of those meetings, including code enforcement, COPP, and the neighborhood resource specialist, along with the ward director. So now we're going to include a person from the mayor's office or executive management, and it just appears to me that as ward members, we are being marginalized within our wards, and our duties are being usurped by members of your executive staff. And I, for one, am not comfortable with that. So I wanted that to be on the record so that the public can understand that your tax dollars are paying for these neighborhood resource centers, which are fully staffed, to the best of my knowledge, with code enforcement officers, as well as community-oriented police, as well as a neighborhood resource specialist. And the citizens call there as well. So I just want to make sure that people know and understand what you are paying for and why I have concerns about this budget. I feel that the money that we're paying, starting out at $28 an hour, we can take that money and increase the salaries, hourly rates for our code enforcement officers and for our litter crews and for our sidewalk crews and for our animal services people and garbage workers who have to respond to the infrastructure needs out there on the street for our citizens. And I believe if we could pay them more, then we would not have the turnover that we have. Because what I'm hearing is that we can't fill the positions. We keep trying to hire and we can't hire. Well, maybe if we increase the salary, the hourly salary, that would do that. And perhaps some of these positions that we continue to stockpile at City Hall, we can take that money and increase the salary for code enforcement, animal services, neighborhood resource specialists, litter crew, sidewalk crew, and anyone on the front line that are providing direct services to keep the city of Little Rock clean and functioning. Thank you.
And Director Wright, I normally don't do this, but want to make sure the public's aware. The members of the city board has approved increases already to public works employees as well as the CDL drivers that took them up to $18. The city board also approved increases to code enforcement officers. They've already received increases this year. So everything that you just stated, they've already received increases. Again, members of the city board, as Director Wright shared, yes, code enforcement attends meetings. COPP officers attends meetings. I would love for you all to come to City Hall for 8 hours a day and see the number of phone calls that come. As I was talking to one member of the board, they don't want a phone call every time someone's trash didn't get picked up. They just want the trash to get picked up. Again, we're being responsive to the residents and just want to make sure we have that stated clear for the record. Director Compuris. Director Compuris' hand was up. Did you take your hand down, Director Compuris?
Passed up, Joan.
Yeah.
It must be stuck, Director Pierce. Now we have Director Adcock,
Yes, Mayor,
and then Director Phillips.
I would like to request that you send a press release out about the items on the Terry House, because we're all getting telephone calls on that, and lots of people in this community loves that old building, and I think that they would appreciate hearing what we heard tonight from Sarah.
Yes, ma'am. We will get a press release out. And again, we gave that, Director,
If I could interrupt.
you want to catch that?
We've
for
got a
me?
lawsuit going on with the Terry House. I'm excited to hear about this money. I'm scared to death of sending out a press release and that this doesn't work out and it comes back to bite us because somebody reads it the wrong way. I mean, it's come out of this meeting that there looks like to be some possibilities when they have come to fruition.
That's what I was just going to share, that we need to have the budget. We merely wanted to share with you that we've found an avenue that's going to be coming forth in the budget amendment. So once you pass the budget amendment, Director Adcock, and I believe we're scheduled to have the budget amendment on December 21st, then it'll be in solidification. But we want to let you know ahead of time because Director Miller has shared, you all have already been receiving phone calls, and we wanted to be responsive to you all.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And I do
And
want to
thank you,
say
Mr. Attorney.
I agree with Doris on what she was saying about our neighborhoods, our neighborhood resource centers, and everything. We have a pipeline for people to call and get their complaints. And I wish that maybe your office could just suggest to them that they use the pipeline that we've already got established. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. All right, I think that is it. Director Phillips?
Thank you, Mayor. I got two things. One, I think this came up at a meeting that I missed, but I see in the budget on page 58, we are reinstituting our Little Rock Residency Incentive Program. I think that's for police officers. Is that correct? The Little Rock Residency Incentive Program, that's for police officers. Is that correct?
It's for all employees that are moving to Little Rock for the first time. When you become a new employee, that's part of your offer. You're told that if you relocate to the city of Little Rock within a certain amount of time of your employment, you have an opportunity for $5,000 towards closing cost on a home purchase, or I believe it's half of that for rent for an apartment if you're moving into Little Rock.
And that's why I wanted to clarify that it was for everyone, not just
It's for everyone, and it's not a new program. This is something we've had going. It's just last year we still had funds remaining that were available and did not need to refund that program, but we've exhausted those funds, so we have the allocation in the 2022 budget to replenish it.
Okay, thank you. My second point is to address my colleagues on the conversation that we just had about the different meetings. Just to at least add context from my perspective, being an at-large member for 12 months now, that same conversation applies to Director Adcock, Director Pierce, and myself. I mean, if I show up to a Ward 1 meeting, that constituent could say, what is Antoine doing here? I thought Director Miller was my person. What is Director Pierce being here? I thought Director Miller was my person. What's Director Adcock doing here? I thought Director Miller was my person. Well, you know what? We work together. I get there, when I go to different ward meetings, I reach out to the directors and say, hey, I may attend. If I can, sometimes I just show up because I'm being responsive to our constituents in my role representing 202,000 people in the city of Little Rock. I don't want us to get bogged down or thinking that we're stepping on each other when we're supposed to be working together. And this conversation, I hope the public is watching this and understand that at least what I'm seeing is an opportunity for us to work together and not be upset that someone else is helping a constituent in a different ward. I mean, I really get that because I represent everyone who lives in Little Rock. That's what I was elected to do. So I don't want us to overthink this, overanalyze this. This is just us trying to work together from my perspective. And I think if we have those concerns, those same concerns apply to me, apply to Director Pierce or Director Adcock, because we're not ward directors either. So I just wanted to add that context, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Phillips.
Mayor,
Director Wright.
Thank you, Director Phillips, for that vantage point as from an at-large director. However, my concern is that I don't get information or communications from City Hall, from the Office of Executive Management. So I would love to work closer with the Office of Executive Management, but I read about things on social media. So am I going to read about issues in my ward on social media that they are addressing that I haven't addressed? So it can flow both ways. So I appreciate you taking a bird's eye view. However, the lack of communication has been something that has been of a concern to me for some time now. So I don't want to be marginalized in my ward. I'm very proactive, and I want us to be proactive, and I want all of our constituents within this city to have their needs addressed. And I don't have any concern about somebody trying to help me do that. I would love to have that help. But is that what this is? That's the question. And so I appreciate what you're saying, and I look forward to seeing you next year at some of the neighborhood meetings. Thank you.
I've been to them, and I'll be back.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wyrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to kind of follow up with Doris's, not these comments, but the previous comments. And my concern with the resources we're talking about is it seems like we got a lot of ticket takers. In other words, we got a lot of people that are taking information, and we only have so many people in the field to handle all those requests. And so instead of having so many ticket takers, if we had the resources in the field to handle the problems that we have, I think we'd be better served to do that. So I'm willing to work with anybody, but you know, with additional people taking issues and then funnel them to different departments, it just seems like there's too many people in the mix of what's going on.
Any more questions? Any more questions? Seeing none, we'll schedule the second reading as previously stated at a later date. I know Director Campuris is going to be meeting with Director Linehan as well as Director Witherell to address those questions, and we'll schedule the second reading at another date before the December 30th deadline. We'll now go to item number 16.
An ordinance to fix and impose the aggregate amount of fees and charges to be paid to the City of Little Rock, Arkansas by Energy Corporation and the method of payment thereof, to amend Section 9 of Little Rock, Arkansas Ordinance Number 11,683 of December the 6th, 1965, and for the purposes first reading.
Move to suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion. Director, Mr. Moore?
Mayor, remember as we talked about this morning.
You're correct. I apologize. Because items 16, 17, 18,
and
19 are all related to item number 15. We will now, those will be consolidated into the second reading at a later date. We'll now go to item number 20. If you will read, Madam Clerk, item number 20.
Mayor, if we're going to hold it on first reading, I need to at least read 17, 18, and 19.
Yes, ma'am.
Ordinance number 17, to amend Little Rock, Arkansas, ordinance number 11,366 of March the 4th, 1963, as amended, to provide for levying a franchise fee to be paid by CenterPoint Energy Arkla, to provide for the payment thereof and for other purposes. An ordinance to levy franchise fees to be paid by all carriers, providing local access telephone services, to provide for the payment thereof and for the purposes. An ordinance to fix and impose the amount of all fees and charges to be paid to the City of Little Rock, Arkansas by all companies that provide intrastate or intrastate long-distance telecommunication services, and all business incidental to or connected with the conducting of such telephone business in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to amend Section 3 of Little Rock, Arkansas Ordinance Number 15,706 of July 5th, 1989, and for other purposes. First reading.
And for the record, if Directors Adcock and Wright could withdraw their motion to go to the second reading on number 16.
Director Wright withdraws her second on item number 16. Matt? Director Adcock, do you withdraw that motion for item number 16?
On 16? Yes, I do.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Director Phillips. Thank you, Director Adcock. Thank you, Director Wright. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 20.
A resolution to declare it the policy of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas to assure that city officials are notified anytime a public meeting is held to discuss city topics, and such meetings are convened by the city, hosted by the city, or involve city officials or employees, to provide that public notice of such meetings shall be timely posted on the city's website and for the purposes.
Move for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Director Hines, you had your hand up before we go to a vote.
Yes, and I just wanted some clarification. I don't know from Director Wright or from the city attorney on this resolution. So I understand the need to want to be notified when there's staff or planning meetings in our area, but does this mean that anytime people are having a meeting with planning staff, are they all going to have to be notified, or is this, I mean, I'm trying to make sure no, I get it, but I just don't want to make sure we open up a can of worms where we're getting notified for everything under the sun that we don't need to be there. And then whose job is it going to be to let us know that? Is it going to be Ashley's, the city manager?
Can I? My intention was that if, say, the mayor's office schedules a meeting in Ward 6, that they contact me to let me know that, and not just hold a meeting in Ward 6 that I don't know anything about, and especially if it's a public meeting. So this did not include, and Mr. Carpenter was supposed to clarify this, that it did not include like a planning staff meeting or anything like that. This was strictly, this is the kind of communication that I was talking about that I feel that we need to be aware of meetings that are planned and are taking place in our wards. So that was my intention behind it. And Mr. Carpenter was charged with making clear that we were not talking about a staff meeting or anything like that, because typically those are not held in wards anyway.
And Director Wright, that's not what this is. I actually agree with Director Hines. And the Office of Executive Administration, which includes the city manager, city clerk, and all those employees that are part of Office of Executive Administration, to ensure that we work on behalf of the city of Little Rock. We often, if not always, if there's a public meeting there, you all are receiving a notice. I do not expect to schedule around if I'm having a public meeting. I represent the entire city of Little Rock, and we'll have a meeting wherever I so choose to have a meeting. We'll definitely will make sure you're aware. And when we're having public input meetings, those are notified. But what Director Hines is sharing, that I think it's opening up a lot more than what's intended.
You could have a meeting wherever you want to have a meeting, and I can have one wherever I want to have a meeting.
We agree.
However, I would like to be notified and be made aware of what is going on in my ward, which is you said when we were discussing the constituent services, you went out of your way to say that.
I guess what I'm sharing is you are being notified, you will continue to be notified. But if there's a notion that.
No, I thought I made myself clear. Mr. Carpenter, can you express that? You said you redid this.
You may want to look at it again.
In Section 3 of the ordinance that was posted on Friday on the website, it expressly exempts internal city meetings that deal with personnel matters, internal staff meetings that do not involve all the city departments and are not intended as public meetings, and meetings to which someone from the city is invited by someone else to attend, but it's not called by the meeting. It's not called by the city for the meeting. So I think that covers everything that I could think of.
Thank you. And I believe Director Adcock, you had said something of, are we in the voting phase? Because I said just call the question, you voted up or voted down?
I had a question for discussion. My hand's raised.
Director Phillips.
I wanted to know when
Director Phillips, I do apologize, Director Webb, then Director Phillips.
okay, sorry. Go ahead, Director Ray. I'm sorry.
So I apologize, Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. In looking at this, in section 2, where it says meets any one of the following criteria. So if I have a meeting with my neighborhood associations, which I have done in the past, then do I have to notify the at-large directors and the other directors?
Yes, ma'am, including me. Yeah.
And I understand Director Wright's intent, and I raised the question with you and your staff when the meetings were set up.
And we talked, yes.
We talked about that.
And I think we have a remedy for that. And I think essentially, we have a remedy for that. So I don't see the need for that because I understood that issue because if many members will remember, there was an issue 3 months ago with Public Works. There was a meeting held in Kavanaugh on a drainage issue, and we had to redo another meeting because of some things happened. But we've now worked through that, Director Webb, but I don't think there'll be any more issues like that.
Right. But I understand Director Wright's point, but I think this is going too far in what it says in here. I don't want to, we can be adults and we can be responsive
with
to
each
each other, and I'm not going to vote for this, Director Wright, with all due respect.
Well, I didn't write it, Mr. Carpenter did. I told him what I was concerned about, and he wrote it based upon that. And when I read it, it just seemed too broad as well. So, Mr. Carpenter, can I withdraw the resolution then?
Director Webb, you've got me a bit confused. If you've got a meeting with the neighborhood association, but it's the neighborhood association's meeting.
Yeah, it's their meeting.
It's not even covered.
Sometimes I've met with all of my neighborhood associations.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Meeting.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
It involves an elected official. And sometimes it's about an issue that is of interest to the city board.
You would have to notify. You would have to notify.
Looking at it on my phone, the resolution.
In 2 hours notice, so it could be on the website, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor.
Can I withdraw the resolution, Mr. Carpenter?
Yes, you may. You have the authority to do that.
Director Wright has withdrew that resolution. We'll now move to item M1.
I think my point has been served. Communication is.
Item M1.
Move for the adoption of M1.
I haven't read it.
Oh, sorry.
A resolution to set city ward boundaries within the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, to be modified as a result of the 2020 federal decennial census and for other purposes.
Move for the adoption of the resolution.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please.
Director Adcock, Mayor.
I have a question.
All right. Thank you, Director Adcock. I was putting on my mask and didn't look that way. I apologize.
Mr. Moore, I asked you the question earlier. There has been a new set of lines given since the meetings held in the community. Would you just basically go over what the new lines are so that people who attended the meetings do not think that we're voting on the lines that was presented at the meetings, but moving on a new set of lines?
Sure, and I think Ashley's Ashley has the handout. Really, two minor changes.
Remove your mask, please.
Two minor changes. In Ward 1, we added area from Pine Street up to UP Railroad, Interstate 630 to 12th Street. It's about 700 people. This area was previously proposed to be included in Ward 3, but that actually now sort of keeps that whole neighborhood intact. Ward 1, or Ward 3 removed the Pine to UP Railroad, what we just talked about. And then the other change was to add the area west of Jefferson Creek to Interstate 430, north of Cantrell, and that keeps that Robinwood area together. So those are really the two changes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that, I know that one of those that you just announced, they was counting on being in Ward 3 with Kathy Webb, and now they're back in Ward 3. They're still in 3, or are they in 1? The corridor going down 12th Street, Forest Heights, is that in Ward 1 now, or is that in Ward 3?
It's in Ward 1.
Ward 1, okay. Mr. Miller's in. Thank you.
Any more questions from members of the board? Victor Miller?
Oh, no, I was getting ready to vote.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. It was a resolution, I believe. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read. First, I need to call this public hearing into order for item number 21. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 21.
An ordinance to abandon that portion of the West 2nd Street and Alley partial right-of-way located adjacent to and within Block 5 Union Depot Addition, immediately east of the West 2nd Street and South Battery Street intersection in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, first reading.
We suspend the rules and place on second reading.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to abandon that portion of the West 2nd Street and Alley partial right-of-way located adjacent to and within Block 5 Union Depot Addition, immediately east of the West 2nd Street and South Battery Street intersection in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. Second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Third reading.
An ordinance to abandon that portion of the West 2nd Street and Alley partial right-of-way located adjacent to and within Block 5 Union Depot Addition, immediately east of the West 2nd Street and South Battery Street intersection in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. Third and final reading.
We've now had 3 readings. Director Adcock?
Yes. No, that was from last time.
No questions?
No.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it.
Mayor, you
Let
need
me
to close that.
this. I'm sorry, I should have closed the hearing. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read item number 22. Well, first, we're going to open up the hearing. Madam Clerk, please read item number 22.
An ordinance to abandon a portion of the Polk Street right-of-way adjacent to 5424 Country Club Boulevard in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes, first reading.
We suspend the rules and place on second reading.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Second reading.
An ordinance to abandon a portion of the Polk Street right-of-way adjacent to 5424 Country Club Boulevard in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. Second reading.
We suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Third reading.
An ordinance to abandon a portion of the Polk Street right-of-way adjacent to 5424 Country Club Boulevard in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas. Third and final reading.
We'll now close this hearing. We now had 3 readings. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. Do I have a motion to go to executive session to discuss appointments?
I have my hand raised, Mayor.
Director Phillips, then Director Wyatt.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to point out a couple things before we go to executive session, because I know we lose people afterwards. One thing I wanted to announce, a couple months ago, I guess it's been a couple months ago, the board approved a resolution to create the Small Business Advisory Council that will start meeting in January. That group of individuals has been selected. I want to announce their names and thank them for their service. The first is Abby Stiller. She's the owner of Abby Teas and Things. Jason Davis of Davis Law Firm. Darren Hall on behalf of K. Hall & Sons. Joe Vincent on behalf of Rock City Kitchen and Rock City Tacos. Brian Stewart Empire Nightclub, Melanie Miller, Transformed by Melanie. Before the end of the year, I'm going to work with city staff to make sure that they have their initial meeting in January. Just wanted to thank the board for your vote on that and thank them publicly for their future service. I think the kids call that TIA. Thanks in advance to them for that. The other thing I want to ask the city manager about before we leave, I've received some additional calls. Any updates on the Canis Park construction, the basketball goals under the bridge? Can you provide an update for us?
Sure. I believe that on your next agenda, we'll have a contract with an architect to begin the design. So that should be on the 14th and 21st.
Awesome. That's great news. Secondly, a few weeks ago when we did had the conversation about the form of government, just want to put this back in front of you, City Manager. I requested that we possibly have a board retreat of some sort at the beginning of sometime early in 2022. Any updates on that to share?
Sure. Ashley and the staff have been tasked with trying to find a location, and I think I'm going this week to look at potential sites.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Director Wyatt? Director Eckhouse, is your hand up?
Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, I have a question about that M1 resolution that set out the new city ward boundaries. And I'm curious to know, does that go into effect immediately or will it go into effect 30 days? Did we need an emergency clause on that? So it goes into effect 30 days from today? Tom's shaking his head on everything, so I'm
It
not
doesn't
sure.
actually take effect until the next election. I mean, that is what the ward boundaries will be for the 2022 election. If something should happen to a board member that they will be no longer serving between now and the 22 election, those are the boundaries that will be used to determine whether or not the person is an elector that resides in a particular ward.
Well, I know there's a number of neighborhoods out there that are going to have to get used to new directors. So I'm curious to know if those new boundaries are in effect now, and do we start working with those neighbors, or do we just, I mean, there ought to be an effective date. I understand it's for elections, but we all have changed some boundaries, and so should I be working with the new boundaries, the old boundaries? What's the plan here?
I can make a suggestion.
Vice Mayor Hines, we do want to keep, Vice Mayor Hines, we do want to kind of keep in order. Go to Director Adcock first. I don't.
But Mayor, he wants to make a joke though. I think you can go out of order when you make a joke.
Make a joke?
I don't. I've never known him to make a joke, so I'm gonna go based off experience, Director.
Know him very well. They're kind of corny, but he makes.
But I think to answer Director Wyrick's question, I think the board just passes the resolution, they're in effect. So it'll be filed in the city clerk's office. There'll be we'll put them on our website, but in my mind, they're in effect.
As of today?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why there'd be a joke about that. But
Well, if you're running for re-election, that's where you ought to be spending your time.
okay, thank you. I was concerned about an emergency clause, is what I was concerned about.
I get it.
I was too. I was going to ask that resolution, so we don't need one.
Director Adcock.
Yes, I have two things. First, Director Phillips, I would like to have a list of those people on the committee, please, and when they're having their meetings.
That's not a problem. We're going to get that to everyone. I just want to announce it publicly tonight. You'll get the list.
Okay, Mr. Carpenter, this question's for you. Several years ago, we passed some rules and regulations pertaining to campaigning by city board members. Then through the years, they have kind of been pushed underneath the rug and said, we're not going by those. We need to know if those are still the law, the rules. If they are, we need to get them to everyone. If they're not, then we need to cancel that and decide what we want to do.
Director Hancock, the rules that you had on signage were basically deemed unconstitutional in litigation out of the federal courts in the Eighth Circuit. The rule that you had on campaign contributions was also deemed to be an unconstitutional restriction. We issued an opinion about the campaign financing this past February, I think, maybe in June actually, and I thought we repealed the sign ordinance aspect of it.
Okay, so the
If you want to
individuals
repeal
who-
the specific
individuals who's
provisions, I
wanting-
can prepare an ordinance that will repeal those provisions.
The individuals who's wanting to campaign for city director or for the mayor's position or any other thing up for election next November can start campaigning whenever they want to, correct?
Well, the time restriction we put as to a number of months before and a month afterwards could not be enforced. And state law right now has a 2-year time frame.
So correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm not campaigning, by the way.
You're not campaigning, Director Eckhart?
No, sir. I've got 3 more years.
Oh.
Director Campiris and Director Phillips and I, we don't have to campaign this year.
We can agree on that, Director Eckhart.
Director Hines?
Oh,
That was up from later.
I'm good.
All right.
Motion to go into executive session, Mayor.
There's a motion. Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Ayes have it. We'll now go into